He is the voice of the World Series coverage on ESPN Radio. Dan Shulman joining us here. How are you, Dan?
I'm doing great, Rich. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine. So do we see Schwarber in the lineup tonight?
We do. Apparently, saw a couple of tweets recently that Joe Maddon has said in the last half hour or so that Schwarber's going to be in the lineup, DHing, and I guess he did enough in those 3 days in Arizona to make them think that there's a spot for him, and I think there is a spot for him. I think this is, it's all reward, very little risk. I don't think they have a natural guy to fill the DH spot. I don't think he starts the games in Chicago. I don't think they're going to play him in the field, but I think he'll be the DH, assuming he does okay and the knee's all right. I think he'll DH every game in Cleveland.
Isn't that amazing? And where do you think Salazar fits in for the Indians?
He's a real wild card. I think if, one of the starters got in trouble early, let's say it's not Kluber, but game 2 or 3, Tomlin or Bauer, in whatever order, I think Salazar could come in middle relief, but I think even more likely is game 4. They don't really have an ideal guy for game 4. It's either going to be Kluber on short rest, Ryan Merritt, who did that great job against Toronto in game 5 of the ALCS, or Salazar starting that game. It could be kind of a piggyback game, Merritt for 3 and Salazar for 3, or the other way around. So I think Terry Francona, it's really going to be, not to overuse the cliche, but kind of a game-by-game situation. If they need Salazar middle relief in 2 or 3, he could use him there. Otherwise, I think he factors into game 4.
Dan Shulman joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. Dan, you've called so many big events. You've been there and done that, certainly in many sports where you've seen some of the all-time greats win, and you've also seen some I guess, schools and or teams that have been hoping to win finally break through. Where does calling an Indians-Cubs World Series rank on your list, Dan?
Well, it's funny, Rich, because I've gotten texts from, all kinds of friends in the business and out of the business, way more than I normally get. This is the 6th World Series I've been lucky enough to call on ESPN Radio, and I've gotten way more texts from friends this time saying, man, this is really cool, or man, make sure you enjoy the moment, or man, I wish I could be there. This is different. I'm not going to lie. I mean, you got one team that hasn't won since 1948 and the other that hasn't won since 1908. And talking with Aaron Boone, who's, been with me all October and will be with me for the World Series, we're both really relishing this. And no matter who wins, this is going to be, I think, a very memorable World Series, and it's kind of a cool combination of teams and fan bases and histories that we got going here.
And I think you've got some Hall of Fame possibilities on the line here, right, for the winners. Joe Maddon has made some bones for himself, but he doesn't have the ring. Theo Epstein, if they win, he would have broken the Red Sox and the Cubs curses. And if Francona wins, he'd have broken the Red Sox and the Indians curses. I mean, this is a lot more than just a series that's on the line, if you think about it here.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, Joe Maddon didn't become a manager until relatively late in his coaching career. He coached for a long time with the Angels, but, had great success with Tampa Bay. And if he has, if he's with the Cubs for 5, 6, 7 years, no reason to think he won't be. And if they have a ton of success, and there's no reason to think they won't, I think he's got a chance at Cooperstown. I agree with you. I think Tito getting the Indians to the World Series has been incredibly noteworthy, and I think he's got a chance to be in the Hall of Fame, especially if they win it. And I think one day the Executive of the Year award might be renamed the Theo. I mean, if you win the Executive of the Year, you might get the Theo Epstein. I mean, to do what he did in Boston, to do what he did in Chicago, to break one curse, maybe break another curse. Both big money franchises, I get that, but there are a number of big money franchises out there that aren't winning as consistently as the teams Theo Epstein has have won. So, what he's done to turn this from a 100-loss team into a 100-win team in 4 or 5 years, this job that he's done in Chicago is impressive.
Dan Shulman calling the World Series with Aaron Boone on ESPN Radio, joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. And I've said it on this show for several weeks. You've seen it in person. To me, baseball, playoff baseball, finds your team's weakness more than any other playoffs in any sport. If you got the right fielder who's got the poor throwing arm, the shortstop that can't range to a certain side, the ball's going to find you, bullpen, et cetera, et cetera. What's the Cubs' one weakness that you think the Indians can exploit in this series?
Well, I think it's possible to exploit it, but boy, teams have had trouble doing it, and I'm sure you've talked about it, is John Lester's difficulty throwing the bases. Now, he's a great pitcher. Might win the Cy Young Award this year. Proven October pitcher, to say the least. But the Indians are an incredibly aggressive base-running team, and I think they can do more against Lester than the Giants did and than the Dodgers did earlier in the playoffs. You know, as the old cliche goes, though, you can't steal first. They got to get on. If they can get on, I think they're going to be unbelievably aggressive against them. I think the other thing that could really help the Indians is if they can get the starting pitchers out in the 6th or the 7th inning and then force Strop or Montgomery or Wood or Rondon to get big outs to get it to Chapman. Those guys are all good relievers, but I think if the Indians can get into the bullpen, you know, more than just once or twice in the series, get in there fairly early a few times, that could help.
Obviously, that's not a weakness for the Indians. I mean, we had Andrew Miller on Friday. I said, you know, what point is your head on a swivel to hear the phone ring? You know, and he said pretty much any inning. What is the Indians' weakness you think the Cubs can exploit?
Yeah, as you say, it's not Miller. I mean, he's a weapon. He's the best reliever in baseball. Between the stuff and the lack of ego, you know, pitch me anytime you want in the multiple innings, he's unbelievable. I think for the Cubs, it could be the Indians starting pitching. I mean, Kluber's great, and he's been great in the playoffs. Tomlin had a great start against the Blue Jays, but the season numbers are average. Bauer can be very good, but he can be a little bit inconsistent, and we'll have to wait and see, you know, how the finger from the drone injury is. And then Game 4, we don't know who's going to start right now. So I think for the Indians, it's funny to say because they were so good, their pitching was so good this year, but without Carrasco, without a completely healthy Salazar, and with some uncertainty about Bauer, I think it would be the starting pitching. But, you know, having said that, they gave up, 8 runs in 5 games to Toronto, a pretty good hitting team.
And the Red Sox, too.
Right now, I think both of these teams have very, very few weaknesses.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. And then, you know, the whole Red Sox aspect of it, too, with Francona and Theo. It's tough for Red Sox fans to see this. Yankee fans, the 2 closers they gave away in July are pitching in this World Series. It's unbelievable how things happen like that.
Yeah, I think we knew back at the end of July the Yankees were going to be very impactful in terms of who was going to make the playoffs as soon as they started trading guys. So, and it certainly turned out that way. And right now, Miller's having the bigger impact. I mean, Chapman is great, but he's had a couple of bumps in October, and the 8th inning thing hasn't worked out well. And Joe Maddon has shown he wants him sometimes for 4, 5, 6 outs. Trusts him a little bit more than some of the other guys in the pen. And the Indians are good at grinding out at bats. They really are. They had the second most runs in the American League this year behind Boston. I don't think people know that about the Indians, so by and large. But they're going to make the Cubs work for every out.
Dan, have a great time. Great call. Enjoy it. Soak it in, as your friends have told you. You bet. Thanks for taking the time. That's Dan Shulman.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.